Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the video, welcome to my garage. In my last video, I was doing some specifics with Bentech and I was kind of highlighting how I take the design from the Bentech software to the chassis. That was several weeks ago. We had family in town last week, we have family in town this week, but there are some people who are watching these videos and they really want to see the details of this chassis design. So I didn't want to go too far of a gap in making some parts of the chassis without going over them with you guys. So I'm not going to specifically be fabricating anything in this video. What I want to do is just take an opportunity to highlight some of the things that I've done on the chassis since the last video, and then I want to show you guys some of what I'm thinking about doing or my thought process on how I'm going to be moving forward with it. So in the last video, this little triangle here and the little piece that goes between there is the piece I was transferring from Bentech and the templates and all that stuff. Well, both of those pieces, that one there and that one over there, are in place. They're all welded. I've had some people ask about my welds. Everything I'm doing up to this far, I have solid welded it once I put it in there to try to make things so that I can get to the welds a little bit easier. Try to show you guys. These for me are really good welds. These, I would say, at least for me, this is some of the best welding I've ever done. Maybe I did a little better 20 years ago when I was younger, but these for me are pretty darn good. I'm really happy with these welds. So anyways, okay, I can't get the dogs. Anytime I get the dogs out here, they just want to go out. You guys should want to hang with me. Anyways, so I got these two triangles in, which are a big part in the chassis because a lot of the chassis is scaled off of this triangle because, like I said in the other video, from here to here is the line between the door and the rear quarter. So that's an important reference point on this chassis. So I got those in, and then I put the crossbar between them. Then I put a brace down here. This brace is off center so that I can get my shift linkage through there. Then I've got this hoop, and this is all per the ratchet chassis. This is all right on par. This is where the fuel cell goes. The fuel cell on ratchet sits right in there. On Mauler, it'll do the same thing. Then I started building the structure back here for the transaxle and the engine. And this is where things get a little bit different from ratchet. Still basically the same design, but the transaxle, the Volkswagen Type 2 transaxle is a different width than the Weddell, and it's smaller. And it's important where these suspension mounts are in relation to the geometry of the suspension. So these tubes have to be at a certain width. I knew on this one how wide they needed to be because I took all the dimensions from Mauler before I took him apart. And if you remember, I'm trying to rebuild Mauler with a much better chassis, but at this point in the game, I'm not making major suspension design changes. I'm just trying to get him a really nice chassis. So I didn't want to make any changes to this stuff, even though I see some changes that could or should be made at this point in the game. I'm not doing that. I'm just carrying over things from Ratchet's old chassis to this new chassis. One thing that is painfully obvious, this suspension point, if you look, the cross member is here and this is up here. This should be right around here so that any forces going this way can transfer through to the cross member. On Mauler's old chassis, this was really congested and I had to put this up here. I didn't have any choice. On this build, what I should do and I would have to modify the control arms. So I had kicked these in because of clearance issues I had. I don't think I'm going to have those issues on Mauler, so maybe at a later date, me or maybe the next person who owns Mauler, because I'm really doing this to him. Well, number one, because I enjoy the build, but number two, I need to sell Mauler because I want to devote all my time to ratchet. But anyways, what should happen is this lower control arm should be remade, and then this should kick the other way to move this connection point back. That way they could get this connection point closer to this cross member. But again, like I said, that worked on Mauler, no problem. Never had any issues with that. And it was the same situation on Mauler. It had a cross member, but that was a little bit closer. No, actually he didn't. And the cross member that he had wasn't as solid as this one. So, you know, Mauler didn't have any problems with that. So he won't have any problems with that like this, but these will be things that if somebody wanted to do some upgrades, moving that and changing the lower control arm would make it much stronger. But either way, these are where they are for now. I have those all in place, measured all out, duplicated from Mauler's original chassis so that I maintain the same suspension geometry. These tubes are 1.5 inches lower than the rest of the chassis. And then I've got my transaxle mounted in here. You can see it's got these lower tabs down here that utilize 2 of the lower engine mounting tabs. And then down here, it's got this tab which grabs the lower mounting bolt on the transaxle. It has an upper one as well, but I don't really see why I would need that, so I kept that minimal. And then the entire engine and transaxle is kicked up 8 degrees to try to get the engine up a little bit higher. On this setup, if it was flat, the oil pan would hang down lower than the transaxle because the transaxle's ring and pinion is pretty small. So I kick it up 8 degrees, and that basically makes it so that it's flat between the transaxle and the engine. And then when I build the rear portion here, as soon as I get past the oil pan, then I can start to kick up and come out of there. 8 degrees is basically what Mauler was before. Never had any issues with oil return or anything on that engine, so I'm definitely going to stick with that 8 degrees. And then I also added, once I knew how wide these tubes were going to be, then I was able to add those tubes in there. And that's about it for the chassis work. It might not seem like a lot, but it was actually slow going laying these tubes out and my kickers up there and things like that. So now the transaxle is bolted in there and it's in its resting spot. Engine obviously is not. It's still being held up by the jack. However, I'm not going to make the rear portion right now. I do have, that's the rear cage that was on Mauler. On Mauler, the rear cage could be bolted on and bolted off. And I think on this version, on Mauler 2.0, I think, and I'm not sure yet, I think I'm going to make the rear cage integral to the chassis so that it can't be unbolted. The downside to that is you have to make the cage stick further back so that you have room to unbolt the engine and pull it back and then come up. But if we go to Ratchet's rear cage is not removable, and by doing that it allows me to triangulate it all the way down, and it triangulates into the chassis itself. You can see even through here it's triangulated. It's triangulated everywhere. So the rear cage is much, much stronger. And like I said, the only thing you have to do is make sure that you have enough room. And on this engine, when I pull him out, I actually have to remove the pulley, remove the oil filter and this oil filter housing in order to slide it back far enough and pull it up. But I like that that cage is integral with the chassis. I think it makes it a lot stronger. So what I've done for now is I've got these things in place, transmission is bolted in place, and I'm just going to think about this for the next couple of days. At some point I'll probably mock this up, so that I can see what it looks like, and I'll push it in, I'll pull it out, and just give my brain bucket a little bit of time to kind of think it through. So now that I have that stuff in place, I have to come forward and I have bolted on, this is the front clip from Mauler, the actual front clip. Nothing's welded here, it's just clamped to the chassis jig. This puts me up at my, I think this is 8 degrees, and this gives me my 8 degrees of caster for the front suspension. And that's exactly what it was on Mauler, and that's exactly what it is on ratchet. So I know that works. But at this point, I need to figure out where this front clip is going to go. This needs to tie in with this point right here is where the door ends. So I'll be building structure that comes straight up here. The door will come to there, and then the fiberglass front end will come right up to the door. And then those two lines will come up and they will dictate where the roof, I don't know if you guys saw on Instagram, I've been playing around with paint as well. So this is Mauler's old roof, and you can see that I slapped some blue paint on there. Nothing fancy. I know this is going to be getting scratched up. I know I need to fill in these holes, but I wanted to experiment just with the paint colors, but also how to spray the paint itself. But anyways, this point right here on the roof, right there, it's going to have the fiberglass front end come to here, and then the doors are going to come to here. So I'll need to mock this up. Once I have the door panel and the fiberglass front end on, then I'll know where the roof comes in here, and I'll make a bunch of jigs. This is the same thing I did on ratchet. I'll make a bunch of jigs to hold the roof in place. That will give me the structure of the roof, and then what I'm really looking for is when the roof comes down here, I need to find out where it comes down and where the curvature sets in so that I can then start laying the tubes that are going to connect with the chassis here. So once I have all those pieces kind of temporarily clamped in place, then I can come back to this point, because I said this is basically the point that everything scales off of. Then I'll come back to this point, I'll create a hoop that comes up and around the roof, and then from this same point I'll have a piece that comes back, meets right where the curvature of the roof is, and then that'll be the point that comes back and connects with the rear cage. So I'm setting some of these pieces up, including this piece, so that I can get to a point where I can just mock up and clamp the fiberglass front end, the doors, the quarters, and the roof. And then once I have that stuff mocked up, then I can build the inside portion of the chassis around those metal panels. Okay, that's it. I know that was a lot of talking, but there's a lot of people that really want to understand the process to putting this together. I didn't want to glaze over that and just jump into the next video where I might have a bunch of these body panels already in place. And I'm not kidding where I said I wanted to squeak out here and make a video, because the wife just came out and told me we need to get going. So I'm going to take this video. Hopefully tonight I'll be able to edit this into something and upload it tonight, maybe tomorrow, and then that'll be it. So thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you're enjoying it, or it's helping you with whatever you might be working on. And I hope to see you on the next video. Take care. Put your foot on there. There you go. Now if you need to, you can grab this. There you go. And then just, pull that in.
Comfy, huh?
There you go. Not too bad, right?
Yeah.
And then, now to get out. And then up there. Now you're gonna pull this foot over the door, and this foot, see there's a little pad there? Mm-hmm. You can use that, and then you'll grab a hold of this to pull yourself out. Nope. Right there.
Oh.
Right here. There you go. All right.